Listen carefully, because understanding what I'm about to share could be one of the most valuable gifts you give yourself in these precious years. After working with thousands of seniors over the years, I've discovered something fascinating. The people who age most gracefully, who maintain their independence longest, and who genuinely enjoy their later years all share one thing in common. They understand that managing their health information is just as important as managing their health itself. Now, before you think this sounds contradictory, let me explain. We've all been taught that honesty is the best policy, that we should be open with our loved ones, that transparency builds trust. And while that's true in many areas of life, there are 5 specific health-related topics that, when shared too freely with family members, can actually undermine your well-being, limit your independence, and create unnecessary stress in your golden years. I know this might sound counterintuitive. After all, shouldn't our children know everything about our health? Shouldn't we be completely transparent about our daily routines, our finances, our plans for the future? The answer, surprisingly, is no. Not always. And today I'm going to explain exactly why. Using real stories from real people who learned these lessons the hard way, and show you how protecting certain information can actually strengthen your family relationships while preserving your autonomy and peace of mind. Let me start with Patricia's story. Patricia was 73 years old, living independently in the home she and her late husband had bought 40 years earlier. She was in good health, active in her community, and financially comfortable thanks to careful planning and modest investments. One evening, during a family dinner, the conversation turned to retirement savings. Patricia, feeling proud of how well she and her husband had managed their money, mentioned the approximate value of their nest egg. She thought she was simply sharing good news, demonstrating that she was financially secure and wouldn't be a burden to anyone. Within 2 weeks, everything changed. Her daughter called asking for help with a down payment on a larger house. Her son mentioned that his business needed a loan. Her grandson hinted that his college tuition was becoming unmanageable. Each request came with perfectly reasonable explanations, and each person genuinely believed their need was justified. After all, Patricia had more than enough, didn't she? Why would she let it just sit in the bank when her family had real needs right now? Patricia found herself in an impossible position. She wanted to help her family, but she also knew that her savings needed to last potentially another 20 or 30 years. She hadn't accounted for long-term care, unexpected medical expenses, or the rising cost of living. When she tried to explain this, her family members seemed hurt. Some accused her of being selfish. Others wondered why she had mentioned the money if she wasn't willing to share it. The warm, loving relationships Patricia had always enjoyed with her children became strained and uncomfortable. Family gatherings were filled with tension. She began to dread phone calls, wondering if another request was coming. This is the first critical area where privacy protects your well-being, your financial details. And I'm not talking about hiding money or being secretive in a dishonest way. I'm talking about maintaining appropriate boundaries around information that, once shared, fundamentally changes how people relate to you. Here's what happens psychologically when adult children learn about their parents' finances. First, there's an unconscious shift in how they perceive the relationship. Whether they realize it or not, they start to see those assets as partially theirs, at least eventually. This changes the dynamic from one of mutual respect to one where the parent becomes, essentially, the fuel, a holder of future inheritances. Second, every financial decision the parent makes becomes subject to scrutiny. A vacation, a charitable donation, a home renovation, all of these suddenly feel like they require justification because family members are thinking about how it affects what they'll eventually receive. Third, and perhaps most damaging, financial transparency creates a situation where adult children feel entitled to have opinions about how their parents spend money. They might discourage you from enjoying your retirement, suggesting you save more for them. They might pressure you to be more generous with gifts or loans. They might even start making plans based on assumptions about your wealth, putting their own financial stability at risk. Arthur learned this lesson when he casually mentioned to his children that he was thinking about selling some stocks. He wasn't asking for advice, just making conversation. But his son, who worked in finance, immediately began offering unsolicited guidance. His daughter started questioning whether he really needed to take that cruise he'd been planning. Suddenly, Arthur's simple comment had opened the door to ongoing oversight of his financial decisions. Every time he wanted to make a purchase, he found himself wondering what his children would think, whether they'd approve, whether they'd be disappointed that he was spending their inheritance. The solution isn't to cut your family off or refuse to discuss anything financial. It's about being strategically vague. When someone asks how you're doing financially, you can honestly say you're comfortable, that you're managing fine, that you're grateful to be secure. You don't need to provide numbers, account balances, or detailed information about assets. If pressed, you can simply say you prefer to keep those details private, just as you wouldn't ask them to disclose their complete financial picture. Some seniors worry this seems secretive or creates mistrust. But think about it this way. Do you know the exact bank balances of your friends, your siblings, your neighbors? Of course not, because those details aren't necessary for healthy relationships. The same principle applies to your adult children. They need to know you're okay. They don't need to know the specifics unless there's a genuine reason, such as helping you manage your affairs if you become incapacitated. Which brings me to an important point. You should absolutely have trusted individuals, whether family members or professionals, who know your financial situation for emergency purposes. This might mean having a power of attorney document, keeping detailed records in a secure location that trusted people can access if needed, or working with a financial advisor who can step in if you're unable to manage things yourself. But day-to-day transparency with multiple family members, that's usually more harmful than helpful. Now let's talk about the second area where privacy protects your independence: your health information. And this one is particularly tricky because, obviously, if you have serious medical issues, your family needs to know. If you're diagnosed with a significant condition, if you're facing surgery, if you're dealing with something that affects your ability to live independently, then absolutely, your loved ones need to be informed and involved. But here's where it gets complicated. Many seniors feel obligated to share every minor health complaint, every routine checkup result, every small concern. And this seemingly harmless transparency can have serious consequences for your autonomy and quality of life. Let me tell you about Evelyn. At 78, Evelyn was remarkably healthy. She had some arthritis, took medication for high blood pressure, and occasionally experienced minor dizzy spells that her doctor attributed to dehydration and said were nothing to worry about. During a phone call with her daughter, Evelyn mentioned these dizzy spells, casually, explaining that her doctor wasn't concerned. Her daughter, however, was very concerned. Within days, Evelyn's daughter had researched every possible cause of dizziness in elderly people, convinced herself her mother was at high risk for falls, and began implementing what she called safety measures. First, she insisted Evelyn stop driving, at least temporarily. Then she suggested Evelyn shouldn't be going to her exercise class anymore because what if she got dizzy there? She started calling multiple times a day to check on Evelyn. She arranged for a home health aide to visit 3 times a week, despite Evelyn's protests that she didn't need help. She even began researching assisted living facilities just in case. Evelyn went from being an independent, active woman to feeling like a child being monitored constantly. Her daughter's anxiety, though well-intentioned, was robbing Evelyn of her freedom and her joy. The activities that kept Evelyn healthy and happy were being taken away in the name of safety. Evelyn became depressed, isolated, and ironically, less healthy than she'd been before, sharing that one minor health concern. This pattern plays out in families everywhere. Adult children, terrified of losing their parents or feeling guilty about not being involved enough in their care, overreact to minor health information. They project their fears onto their parents' situations. They imagine worst-case scenarios, and they start making decisions based on what could happen rather than what is happening. The problem is that this overprotection actually makes seniors less healthy, not more. When you stop driving, you lose independence and the ability to maintain social connections. When you stop exercising, you become weaker and more prone to actual falls. When you're constantly monitored and questioned, you become anxious and stressed. When your children treat you as fragile, you begin to feel fragile, and that psychological shift can have real physical consequences. So what's the solution? Be selective about what you share. If you have a serious diagnosis, if you're facing treatment, If there's something that genuinely requires your family's involvement, then of course tell them. But minor complaints, routine health fluctuations, and small concerns that your doctor isn't worried about, those don't need to be broadcast to everyone. When family members ask how you're feeling, it's perfectly appropriate to say you're doing well, you're managing, you're keeping up with your doctor's appointments. You don't need to list every ache and pain. You don't need to report every slightly elevated test result that your physician isn't concerned about. You don't need to turn every conversation into a medical update. Some adult children will push back on this, insisting they have a right to know everything. But rights and responsibilities need to be balanced with your autonomy and well-being. You have the right to privacy about your body and your health. You have the right to manage your medical care without a committee weighing in on every decision. You have the right to avoid being infantilized by well-meaning children who can't distinguish between genuine care needs and their own anxiety. Here's a practical approach. Designate one person, perhaps your most level-headed child or a trusted friend, as your primary health contact. This person attends important doctor appointments with you, understands your wishes about medical care, and has the temperament to handle health information without panicking. Then, let other family members know that if there's ever something serious, this designated person will keep them informed. This prevents the situation where you're managing multiple people's reactions to every health update while trying to focus on your own well-being. Now we come to the third area that requires careful discretion. Your estate plans. This is perhaps the most controversial point I'll make today, because many financial advisors and even some attorneys recommend transparency about wills and estate plans. The reasoning is that by telling your children what you've decided, you prevent surprises, you give everyone a chance to understand your reasoning, and you reduce the likelihood of contests or disputes after you're gone. In theory, this makes sense. In practice, it often creates disasters. Let me share William's experience. William had 3 children. He'd worked hard his entire life, built a successful business, and accumulated significant assets. He wanted to be fair to all his children, but fair didn't necessarily mean equal in his mind. His eldest son had worked in the family business for 20 years and was taking it over. His daughter had struggled financially and needed more support. His youngest son was financially successful and needed less help, so William structured his estate accordingly. The son getting the business received less cash. The daughter received more to help secure her future. The youngest received less overall because he was already well off. William decided to share these plans with his children, explaining his reasoning. He thought this would help them understand and accept his decisions. Instead, it created years of conflict while he was still alive. His youngest son felt insulted and undervalued, as though his success was being punished. His eldest son resented the implication that the business wasn't valuable enough on its own. His daughter felt embarrassed and defensive, as though her siblings now saw her as the weak one who needed special treatment. Every family gathering became tense. His children stopped speaking to each other as much. They questioned William's decisions repeatedly, each trying to convince him to revise the plan in their favor. William spent his final years mediating disputes among his children instead of enjoying time with them. The very transparency that was supposed to prevent conflict created it, just at a different point in time. And because William was still alive and could theoretically change his mind, his children saw him as someone to persuade, someone to negotiate with, someone whose estate plan was still up for debate. Here's the fundamental problem with sharing estate plans early. Inheritance is one of the most emotionally charged topics in family life. It's not really about the money or the assets. It's about love, fairness, recognition, and value. When adult children learn what they're receiving compared to their siblings, they interpret those decisions through deeply emotional lenses. They wonder if they're less loved. They question whether their contributions to the family have been valued. They compare their portion to their siblings' portions and look for meaning in every difference. Even when parents divide everything equally, sharing estate plans early can create problems. Children start making financial decisions based on expected inheritances. They might take on debt they can't afford, thinking the inheritance will bail them out. They might underperform in their careers, planning to live off inherited wealth. They might develop a sense of entitlement that affects their relationship with their parents and each other. And then there's the pressure. Once you've shared your estate plan, you've opened yourself up to lobbying, guilt trips, and manipulation. Adult children might try to convince you to change things in their favor. They might highlight all they've done for you, or all they've sacrificed, or how much more they need compared to their siblings. You might find yourself defending your choices repeatedly, or worse, changing your plan. Not because you want to, but because you can't stand the pressure. The solution is to keep your estate plans private until after you're gone. Work with a qualified attorney to create a thorough, legal, properly executed estate plan. Make sure it's clear, well documented, and includes explanations of your reasoning if you want. Designate an executor who you trust to carry out your wishes, but don't share the details with potential beneficiaries while you're alive. If your children ask about your estate plan, you can tell them honestly that you have one, that it's been professionally prepared, that you've thought carefully about what's fair, and that they'll learn the details when the time comes. If they press for information, you can gently but firmly explain that you've decided to keep those details private, to avoid family conflict and preserve everyone's relationship while you're alive. Some people worry that keeping estate plans private will lead to bigger battles after they're gone, but research and experience show the opposite. When adult children learn about estate decisions after a parent's death, they're more likely to accept them, even if they're disappointed. The parent is gone, the decision is final, and there's no point in fighting. Yes, there might be some hurt feelings or disappointment, but those feelings don't poison the relationship with the parent, who's no longer there to be hurt by them. And often, after the initial reaction, adult children come to understand and accept their parents' reasoning. Now, let's discuss the fourth area, where privacy preserves your freedom and joy. Your daily routines and social activities. This might seem less important than finances, health, or estate planning, but it's actually crucial for maintaining your independence and quality of life. Here's what often happens. You mention to your daughter that you've joined a hiking group. You're excited about it. You've met interesting people, you're getting exercise, you're enjoying nature. But your daughter immediately focuses on the risks. What if you fall on the trail? What if you can't keep up with the group? What if you're too far from help if something happens? Before you know it, she's suggesting you find a safer activity, maybe a walking group on paved paths, or, better yet, an indoor exercise class with supervision. Or you tell your son you've been going to a social club at the community centre, playing cards, attending lectures, and participating in activities. He seems supportive at first, but then starts questioning how much time you're spending there. Shouldn't you be resting more at your age? Are you overdoing it? Maybe you should cut back to just once or twice a week instead of going almost daily. The problem is that your adult children, despite loving you deeply, are projecting their fears and anxieties about aging onto your life. They're imagining themselves in your position and thinking about all the things they'd be afraid of. They're not seeing you as the capable, independent adult you are. They're seeing you as someone increasingly fragile who needs protection from the world and from yourself. Louise experienced this when she mentioned to her family that she was taking ballroom dancing lessons. At 75, she'd always wanted to learn to dance, and she was thrilled to finally have the time. The classes were beginner-friendly, the instructor was patient, and Louise was having the time of her life. But when her children found out, they were horrified. Dancing? At her age? What about her knees? What if she fell? Wasn't she worried about looking foolish? Their reaction was so negative that Louise stopped telling them about her activities. She continued with her dance classes, but she kept it to herself. And she realized that by not sharing every detail of her social life, she was protecting her freedom to make her own choices without constant commentary and criticism. This is an important realization. Your adult children don't need to know how you spend every day. They don't need a detailed itinerary of your social activities. They don't need to approve of your hobbies or understand your interests. What they need to know is that you're engaged, active, and happy. The specifics are your business. This is an important realization. Your adult children don't need to know how you spend every day. They don't need a detailed itinerary of your social activities. They don't need to approve of your hobbies or understand your interests. What they need to know is that you're engaged, active, and happy. The specifics are your business. When you maintain some privacy around your daily life, you create space for yourself to explore, to try new things, to take reasonable risks, and to live according to your own preferences rather than your children's comfort level. You avoid the exhausting experience of defending your choices, justifying your activities, or listening to warnings about every possible danger. This doesn't mean living a secret life or hiding major decisions. If you're planning to travel somewhere significant, if you're making a big change like moving or selling your house, if you're starting something that requires an emergency contact, then yes, keep your family informed. But your routine social activities, your hobbies, your daily schedule, those can remain largely private, shared in general terms without excessive detail. When your children ask what you've been up to, you can say you've been keeping busy, seeing friends, staying active. You don't need to provide a blow-by-blow account of every activity. You don't need to justify how you spend your time. You're an adult who's earned the right to structure your days according to your own preferences. The fifth and final area where privacy protects your relationships might surprise you. It's your honest feelings and opinions about other family members. Now, this doesn't mean you should bottle up concerns about serious issues or refuse to address real problems. But the casual commentary, the minor irritations, the personal opinions about one family member shared with another family member, these innocent-seeming conversations can create lasting damage. Ruth learned this the hard way. During a phone call with her daughter Claire, Ruth mentioned that she found her daughter-in-law Monica to be a bit controlling. It was just an observation, Ruth thought, shared in a moment of frustration after Monica had criticized Ruth's parenting advice. Ruth wasn't trying to create problems. She was just venting to someone she trusted. But Claire, whether intentionally or not, mentioned the comment to her brother. The brother told Monica. Monica was deeply hurt and angry. Suddenly, Ruth's relationship with her son became strained because Monica felt attacked and her son felt caught in the middle. Family gatherings became awkward. Monica kept her distance from Ruth. Ruth's innocent comment, made in confidence to one child, had poisoned her relationship with another child and his spouse. This pattern repeats itself constantly in families. You tell one grandchild you wish another grandchild would visit more often. You mention to your son that your daughter seems stressed and you're worried about her. You comment to your sister that you think your son's new girlfriend isn't right for him. Each of these statements might feel harmless, just expressing natural thoughts and concerns. But once spoken, you can't control where they go or how they're interpreted. The problem is that most of us vastly underestimate how quickly and widely our comments will spread. We think we're having a private conversation with one trusted person. We don't realize that person might share what we said with someone else, either deliberately or accidentally. And each time the comment is repeated, it gets slightly distorted, the nuance gets lost, and the impact gets magnified. Adult children especially have trouble keeping their parents' comments about siblings confidential. They might share them out of concern, thinking a sibling should know what's being said. They might share them out of anger, using their parents' words as ammunition in an existing conflict. They might share them thoughtlessly, not realizing the mean amount of damage they're doing. The solution is to be extremely cautious about expressing opinions about one family member to another. If you need to vent, if you need to process your feelings about family dynamics, do it with someone outside the family. A close friend, a therapist, a support group, these are appropriate outlets for these thoughts. Within the family, aim for neutrality and diplomacy. When one family member tries to draw you into commenting on another family member, resist the temptation. If your daughter complains about her brother and wants you to agree with her, stay neutral. You can acknowledge her feelings without endorsing her criticism of her sibling. You can be supportive without taking sides. You can listen without agreeing. This is particularly important when it comes to your children's spouses or partners. Whatever your true feelings might be, keep them to yourself unless there's a serious safety or well-being concern. Your child has chosen this person. Your opinion, even if well-intentioned, is unlikely to change that choice. But expressing your reservations or criticism will almost certainly damage your relationship with your child, who will feel torn between loyalty to you and loyalty to their partner. Some people argue that this approach is dishonest, that families should be able to be completely honest with each other. But there's a difference between honesty and unnecessary commentary. Honesty means not lying, not deceiving, not pretending things are different than they are. It doesn't mean expressing every thought and opinion that crosses your mind. Discretion and wisdom involve recognizing that some truths are better left unspoken, especially when speaking them serves no constructive purpose and only risks creating hurt and conflict. Now, having discussed these 5 critical areas where privacy protects your well-being, let's talk about what happens when you implement these boundaries. Because I don't want you to think this approach makes you secretive, dishonest, or disconnected from your family. Quite the opposite. Seniors who thoughtfully manage what they share and what they keep private consistently report better relationships with their adult children. Why? Because they've removed the sources of tension, conflict, and control that undermine healthy family dynamics. Their children can't resent them for financial decisions they don't know about. Their children can't infantilize them based on minor health information they haven't shared. Their children can't fight about estate plans they haven't disclosed. Their children can't restrict activities they don't know about in detail. And their children can't be divided by opinions that haven't been expressed. What replaces these sources of conflict? Genuine connection. When you're not constantly managing your children's reactions to your money, your health, your plans, your activities, and your opinions, you can actually enjoy spending time with them. Conversations become about shared interests, happy memories, and mutual support rather than defending your choices or managing their anxieties. Many seniors who adopt this approach find that their children actually respect them more, not less. When you maintain appropriate boundaries, when you make it clear that you're managing your own life and affairs, when you don't constantly seek approval or input on every decision, you demonstrate that you're still a capable, independent adult. Your children might initially push back, but over time, most will come to respect your autonomy and even feel relieved that they're not responsible for overseeing every aspect of your life. This doesn't mean closing yourself off or refusing all connection and input. It means being selective and intentional. It means recognizing that transparency isn't always beneficial, that boundaries are healthy, and that you have the right to privacy about certain aspects of your life, regardless of your age. Let me be clear about what I'm not suggesting. I'm not suggesting you hide serious health problems that require your family's involvement. I'm not suggesting you refuse to plan for the possibility of incapacity or make it impossible for anyone to help you in an emergency. I'm not suggesting you cut your family off or refuse to communicate. I'm not suggesting dishonesty or deception. What I am suggesting is thoughtful discretion. It's recognizing that you don't owe everyone complete transparency about everything. It's understanding that your adult children, despite loving you, have their own anxieties, biases, and agendas that can complicate your life if you give them too much information to work with. It's accepting that you can maintain close, loving relationships while still keeping certain areas of your life private. Think about your own parents, if they're no longer living. Did you know every detail of their finances? Did they share every minor health complaint? Did they tell you about their estate plans while they were alive? Did you know exactly how they spent every day? Did they express to you all their opinions about every family member? Probably not. And that was appropriate, that was healthy. That allowed you to have an adult relationship with them based on mutual respect rather than one where you felt responsible for managing their lives or they felt they had to justify themselves to you. You deserve the same autonomy your parents had. You've earned it through decades of responsibility, hard work, and care for others. Your later years should be about living according to your own values and preferences, not about managing your adult children's expectations, fears, and opinions about how you should age. I want you to imagine what your life could look like if you implemented these principles. Picture yourself having conversations with your children where you're not defending your financial choices, where you're not being questioned about every health symptom, where you're not mediating disputes about inheritance, where you're not justifying how you spend your time, where you're not being pulled into family conflicts. Instead, you're simply enjoying their company, sharing genuinely good moments, and maintaining relationships based on love and respect rather than control and anxiety. Picture yourself making decisions about your money, your health, your activities, and your life based on what you think is best, without a committee of worried adult children weighing in on every choice. Picture yourself trying new things, taking reasonable risks, and living according to your own definitions of a life well lived, not according to your children's comfort zones. Picture yourself at family gatherings where relationships are warm and genuine because you haven't created conflict by oversharing. Picture yourself sleeping peacefully at night, not worrying about whether you've shared too much, not managing multiple people's reactions to your decisions, not feeling guilty about wanting privacy. This isn't selfish. This isn't secretive. This is wise. This is healthy. This is how you preserve your dignity, your autonomy, and your relationships in your later years. I've seen countless seniors transform their lives by implementing these principles. They go from feeling exhausted by constant explanations and justifications to feeling liberated and respected. They go from dreading family interactions to genuinely enjoying them. They go from feeling like they've lost control of their lives to feeling empowered and autonomous. You deserve these same benefits. You deserve to enjoy your later years on your own terms, free from unnecessary oversight, unwarranted worry, and exhausting conflict. You deserve to maintain your independence and dignity while still having close, loving relationships with your family. So here's what I want you to do. First, think honestly about your current situation. Are you sharing too much in any of these 5 areas? Are your relationships with your adult children characterized by tension around money, health, inheritance, activities, or family dynamics? Do you feel like you're constantly defending your choices or managing their anxieties? If so, you're not alone, and there's a better way. Second, make a plan for implementing appropriate boundaries. This doesn't have to happen overnight. Start with one area where you can see the clearest problems. Maybe it's financial information that's created entitlement and requests. Maybe it's health details that have led to overprotection. Choose one area and begin practicing more discretion in what you share. Third, prepare responses for when family members ask for information you've decided to keep private. Practice saying things like, "I'm managing that just fine, thank you," or "I appreciate your concern, but I've got it under control," or "I'd rather not go into details about that," or "That's something I'm handling privately." Say these things kindly but firmly. Don't over-explain. Don't apologize. You have every right to privacy. Fourth, find appropriate outlets outside your family for the things you need to discuss. This might mean developing friendships with other seniors who understand what you're going through. It might mean working with a therapist or counselor who can provide objective guidance. It might mean joining support groups where you can be honest about challenges without risking family conflict. Fifth, remember that implementing these boundaries is an act of love, not selfishness. You're protecting your family relationships by removing sources of conflict. You're protecting your own well-being by maintaining autonomy. You're setting an example for how healthy adults relate to each other with mutual respect and appropriate privacy. Your golden years should truly be golden. They should be characterized by peace, joy, dignity, and freedom. There should be a time when you're respected as the capable adult you are, when your choices are your own, when your relationships are genuine and warm rather than tense and controlling. This is entirely possible. But it requires wisdom about what to share and what to keep private. It requires boundaries that protect your autonomy and your relationships. It requires the courage to claim your right to privacy, regardless of what your adult children might think you owe them. You've spent decades caring for others, prioritizing their needs, and putting their well-being first. Now it's time to prioritize yourself. Not in a selfish way, but in a healthy, balanced way that allows you to live well and age with grace and dignity. Take action today. Identify one area where you need better boundaries and commit to implementing them. Talk to one trusted friend outside your family about your thoughts and feelings instead of sharing them with family members who might be hurt or who might use the information inappropriately. Practice one of those phrases for deflecting intrusive questions. Make one decision about your life based solely on what you want, without seeking approval from your adult children. Each small step toward healthy boundaries will make your life better. Each moment of claiming your autonomy will strengthen your sense of self and your confidence. Each successful experience of maintaining privacy will reinforce that you're capable of managing your own life, regardless of your age. You deserve respect. You deserve autonomy. You deserve peaceful, genuine relationships with your family. You deserve to live your final decades on your own terms, making your own choices and enjoying the fruits of a lifetime of hard work and responsibility. Make the decision today to protect these rights by being thoughtful about what you share and what you keep private. Your future self will thank you for the wisdom and courage of that decision.